For old-fashioned recipes and your gardening needs, while sipping on Kentucky bourbon. You sit right back in your big red hat, we're taking rural back from the urban. Listen to the stories where Kentucky proud, share the giggles with all of your friends. You all are tuned in to Friends Drifting.
Hi, I'm Joyce. Welcome to Friends Drift In, your source for local farm-to-table movement in Eastern Kentucky. Today's guest, yes, I do not like to be in the kitchen by myself. So today's guest is new celebrity chef in Pike County, Matt Corbin. Matt is a local fellow. He's putting in a new restaurant called the Blue Raven. To celebrate the Blue Raven today, you might notice I'm a chef groupie and I've got on little blue ravens on my scarf today. So to celebrate the opening of the Blue Raven, which will be in the old Wells building in downtown Pikeville, Matt's going to cook us up one of his favorite dishes that will be on the menu. Matt, you're all about local ingredients. What are we going to do today?
We're going to do something that's really simple that I think a lot of people might want to make at home. It's a meatloaf sandwich. A lot of people make meatloaf and you have it left over the next day because you make a huge portion of it. And so you got to have something to do with it the next day. So
meatloaf is a comfort food. You know, it's what we grew up with. Grandma always made it. It's the type of thing that if you're having a church dinner, especially dinner on the ground, you got to have cold meatloaf. So this is something that's really cool. And meatloaf, Edward Lee, the chef from Louisville that has been nominated for the James Beard Award.
Yep.
He just featured meatloaf sandwiches in a recent Southern Living edition. So you're right on top of it. What are we going to do?
all right, well, normally you would already have a meatloaf made, but we're going to go through and show you everything, and then we'll put the sandwich together later and show you all that. The meatloaf for the restaurant is pretty simple. It's more about the sandwich than it is the meatloaf. I'm trying to look for a good uniform consistency with the meatloaf. That way when we go to serve it on the sandwich, it's pretty easy for us to work with, and it's not got a lot of ingredients in it that are falling apart, you know, a lot of peppers and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
So this is everything we've got here. The first thing we're going to need to do is cut up an onion. I'll go ahead and do that right now.
All right, well, let's talk about the beef that you're going to be using in the restaurant. You're going to be using a special beef from Acres, is that right?
Yep.
They're out of Lancaster, Kentucky, which is in central Kentucky.
Acres aged beef. I like to use Kentucky products wherever we can, especially beef in Kentucky is really big right now. There's a lot of farmers doing their own grass-fed beef, and we're going to be fortunate enough to have some of that product in Pikeville.
Yeah, they call it a dry-aged beef. Now, if you've ever been around a butcher, what they do is they take, after the cow, we'll call it beef, after the cow is ready for processing, they hang it in the freezer. And they call it dry aging. And what that does is that reduces the moisture content, which makes it very tender. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then it also
Very flavorful, too.
concentrates the flavor. Would you compare a dry-aged beef to the type of beef that we normally buy in the store? What's the difference in the flavor palette?
It's just more flavor in general. I mean, I think with a lot of products you see in the grocery stores today, the flavor's kind of gone from, especially if you look at vegetables and things. I mean, they're overgrown, they're too big, they don't have the flavor that they're supposed to have. You know, when you get a dry-aged beef, something you know where it's coming from, it's been taking time to grow, it's going to have a lot of beef flavor. I mean, it's going to taste like what it's supposed to taste like. And I think that's a lot of what's got lost with a lot of products that we eat today.
When we talk about vegetables, and you're chopping up the onions, we're going to put in some onions.
Yep. I like to do a real small dice on this. That way you can see when meatloaf, you know, when you get out of the oven, you take it apart. Sometimes it's falling apart. You know, that's where the onions are too big. So I'm doing a real small dice on this. That way when we go to put it on the sandwich, it'll all be really small.
Y'all will never see me do a good diced onion. So watch now. This is history in the making.
You can do this. Do you want to do the other one?
You'll laugh at me.
You can do that small dice. That ain't bad.
You'll laugh at me. You'll say, Joyce, Joyce, Joyce.
Oh, you've already messed up now, though.
Huh?
You've already messed up now.
Oh, Well, you fix it.
You gotta go planks first.
All right.
Now, if you were doing a real diced onion like in culinary school, they would test me on this, but
So there's a quiz at the end of the program?
halfway through you gotta do a knife skills. But normally you do planks and then you go in from the side, but just for speed's sake, and I just usually do planks and then go for the
Now, are
top.
you using a sweet onion or a Vidalia or a
Yeah,
yellow?
it's just a yellow sweet onion.
And why aren't you crying?
Built up a good tolerance, I guess. I don't ever cry when I cut up onions. I'm not real sure why. All right, so we got that all cut up. We'll put that in here with our acres aged beef.
How much beef do you put in there?
It's a pound. Normally in restaurant setting, I'm making a lot more of this, so I kind of had to shrink the recipe down for this sake. And then everything else here is going to be going in. If you want to throw in, don't throw too much of that in.
What do we got?
Panko breadcrumbs.
Panko breadcrumbs. Now,
Couple
y'all,
of those.
you can get these at the grocery store, usually in the Asian section.
Yeah, they like to stick them over there, but they're just regular breadcrumbs. They're more coarse grained.
So we got two things of
It's 1 cup.
1 cup of panko.
Some oatmeal, 1/4 cup of that.
Now, this is the old-fashioned oatmeal. It's kind of the flat rolled.
About 5 tablespoons of brown sugar
Now,
to sweeten it up a little bit.
Matt. On Friends Drift In, we talk about sorghum instead of brown sugar, but we're going to let Matt get by with that this time. And then we have 2 organic eggs.
2 eggs, yep.
Matt, are you looking for a local producer for eggs?
I've actually met one guy that has his dad actually having some chickens, and he said
Good.
he could give me some eggs, so we'll see how that
Great. And from time to time, you can find those down at the Pike County, down at the Pikeville Farmers Market. From time to time, just got to keep looking.
goes. This is a
Ketchup?
cup of ketchup.
Can
You
I
wanna
use
throw that-
this, or are you going
Absolutely,
to get
that's
upset?
what I put it there for you.
All right. See, I know my way around the kitchen. I can sling the ketchup. All right. And then what?
A little bit of cayenne just to give it some heat. This is going to be a pretty sweet dish, I would say. There's going to be some caramelized onions and some other stuff. So you always got to balance out your flavors. That's the most important thing in cooking. Balance it all out, acid, sweet, salty. You got to get it all in there.
And when we talk about an acid, what does that mean? What would you add for an acid?
Vinegar, lemon juice, anything that's going to cut. In this instance, we've got some balsamic vinegar that's going to go in the sandwich and the end product. So.
All righty.
And then salt and pepper, which would be to taste. It's hard for me to tell you how much I'm putting in here. I'd say it's about 4 tablespoons, but I've got a chef seasoning method now that nobody knows about.
It's a secret, y'all.
It's very secretive. All right, so now we've got this. The preferred method is just use your hands. It's the easiest way to do it, so as long as you've got some good clean hands. You just got to get in here and do this.
Just like Mama said, that's adding the love. Now tell me about the Blue Raven. How did you come up with the name, the Blue Raven?
My brother and I are the ones putting it in, and our last name is Corbin. In Latin, Corvus is the raven. It's on our family crest. It's not something I knew off the top of my head, but it's something I found out just through a little bit of research. Coming up with a name is actually a lot harder than you would think. It was really tough. So we looked and looked for a long time before we finally came up with it.
And why a Blue Raven?
Well, originally I said the Raven, and then my brother said, well, the Blue Raven, and I said, why the Blue Raven? He said, because it's better than a red cardinal. And I
There
was
you
like,
go. Go Big Blue.
That is very true. It's much better than a red cardinal. All right, so I got this mixed up. I'm going to transfer it to our dish here.
Now you didn't grease this.
Didn't grease it. Don't need to. The
Do
other
you
thing,
usually cook in a glass pan, or do you prefer
not
to
in the
cook
restaurant.
metal?
It'll be in a metal pan. And what I do in the restaurant is I put it in actually a double boiler, so it's got some water underneath it to keep it from getting too overcooked.
So it gets very moist.
Very moist.
Another little chef's secret.
That's right. The other thing you might want to think about when you're doing this is, with meatloaf especially, you don't have to get a high-fat ground beef to make meatloaf. It's preferable in like hamburgers and things like that, because the grease, and the fat, that makes the hamburger better, more flavor. holds it together better. But here we're adding a lot of flavor. We're adding a lot of binders to hold the meatloaf together. So we don't need all that fat. So I went 93.7 on this. And especially when you'll see the difference when you get it out of the oven.
93.7, that means
93% ground beef and then
7%
fat. There you go.
All right.
But when you get out of the oven, you'll see a lot less grease coming up off of it, which is much better.
And much more eye appealing and much better for you. Well, that's a good thing.
We're going to put this in the oven.
At what degrees?
400, and it's going to go in for about an hour. All right, next we're going to do a tomato confit.
Now, what is a confit, Matt? That sounds pretty fancy for Eastern Kentucky.
It's not that fancy. It's just one of those words that we use in the restaurant industry. It helps us convey something to somebody without having to say a whole big long definition.
But you're going to give me the definition because the
folks
folks
at
at home.
Definition. So a confit is basically just cooked in its own fat. You'll see a lot of duck confit. They render the fat from the duck, and then they'll cook the leg in the fat. And then when they get done, they can store it in the fat. That's what they used to have to do to keep things fresh, keep it preserved. In this instance, we're doing a tomato confit, so we're just cooking the tomato in its own juice.
Now, these are a plum tomato, so that makes them a little bit meatier, a little more saucier than like a globe tomato, like what you might be used to growing.
Yep.
San Lorenzo is the ultimate tomato.
Oh, yeah, those are the best.
And if you can find the seed to them, which I happen to know that it is available locally, and you can grow your own San Lorenzo tomatoes, you will be flying with the best tomato paste ever when you start canning in the fall.
So this is real simple. All we're going to do, slice them lengthwise in half. Going to get our oven going on 250, which we already have done.
All right.
Got some fresh thyme here and some olive oil.
Now, I like a cold pressed olive oil, Matt. Do you have and cold press, I think, doesn't break down the ingredients in it as much as a hot press. What, do you have a personal feeling about olive oil?
I don't have a personal preference. It's whatever situation you're using it in. If you're going for flavor, you're obviously going to go for a higher quality. I like to use olive oil to cook with in the restaurant. We cut it with a little bit of canola oil just to make it go further, and for the smoke point as far as that goes. So just give it all a little drizzle. You can't do anything wrong here.
And then what do we got there? Is that thyme?
This is fresh thyme. No dried stuff ever.
Let me have one little sprig of that. Now, when we talk about thyme, you want to make sure it's fresh. And to me, this has got a very herby. It's almost got, I think it smells like sage almost. What do you think it smells like?
This time specifically, or in general?
Just in general.
I've never thought about it, but yeah, it does have a sage quality to it.
So we're going to stick this in the oven.
Yep, just pop that in the oven. Basically, we're cooking it down low and slow.
Low and slow. How long are we going to keep them in here?
Depending on how you like it, I like them to get nice and we're trying to get rid of a lot of that moisture and cook them down, intensify the flavor. So you're looking at about 2 hours if you do it on 250, depending on what kind of oven you have. Like a convection oven, you got to really watch them because they can really dry them out fast. So they'll be in there for 2 hours. You'll start to see them. They'll caramelize a little bit and they'll shrink up. They'll get really intense flavor-wise because all that extra water is going away from them. And then they'll be ready to go. And then we'll get them out of the oven a little bit. I'll show what we're going to do with them. The next thing
Here
we're
he
going to do...
goes with this fancy onion cutting again.
Next thing we're going to do is caramelize the onions for our meatloaf sandwich. When you're cutting this onion, you just... Actually, the way you were cutting the onion for the meatloaf would have been perfect for this. We should have let you cut that. You're just going for slices, no big deal. I like to do it kind of thick. That way, when you're cooking them down, you know there's some onion there. It's not just going to go away with too small a slice. And I'm going to teach you how to do this so you can run through an onion real quick too.
Well,
someday.
I'm not coming down and interviewing for a staff position just yet.
So we got a pan on the stove back here. Just turned on. I've just got some regular butter in there. We're going to cook it down. Hot heat. Start off high and then drop it down a little bit once we get our onions in.
All right. Am I going to hear the sizzle?
Hopefully you hear the sizzle if we get it nice and hot.
Now, Matt, is there a trick to knowing when a skillet is hot enough?
I usually, I like to do the hand method, obviously, which I just did. You can tell a lot by sticking your hand in there. Don't touch the pan, obviously. If you just get it right in there, a little bit above. And then if you bend down, you can always see if there's smoke, a little bit of smoke coming off a little wisp. It's usually ready, especially with olive oil or any kind of oil. So we'll toss these in. We've got a little bit of a sizzle going on there. So when we're caramelizing onions, basically all we're doing is cooking them down. We're going to get some brown bits in the bottom of the pan, deglaze that with a little bit of water, and that's going to make those sugars come out, make the onions really sweet, and they're going to be really tender, and they're going to be perfect on our meatloaf sandwich later on.
All right.
So our onions have been cooking down on the stove now. We've got some nice caramelization in the pan, you can see. I've got just a little bit of water here, that's all it takes. Add that to the bottom.
When we talk about caramelization, that means that we've added a little bit of sugar, we got it a little bit brown, and that makes the sugars of the onions kind of come out to the top.
Yep, in this case the onion sugars are the ones that are caramelizing. I just add a little bit of water, that's going to deglaze the pan, get those brown bits off the bottom, and it's going to thicken up, make more of a sauce, and you'll just keep cooking it down, adding water, cooking it down until you get to where you're wanting to be. And that's it for the caramelized onions.
All righty. And then what do we do?
So now we're going to put our meatloaf sandwich together. Do we need to start over?
And here's the finished caramelized onions. Very pretty, all very brown. Looks like we got a little, was it the brown bits or did you add a little bit of pepper there?
There's a little bit of salt and pepper in there. A little bit of salt and pepper in everything I do.
All right.
So to assemble this sandwich, very easy. I've got some sourdough bread here. Any bread will do. I like sourdough for this. We're going to take our meatloaf, which we cut, place it on our sandwich. And then we're going to add caramelized onions. I like to do a pretty good heaping of these. They're really tasty. And our tomato confit, which when we took it out of the oven, all we did was mash it down with some salt and pepper. I don't like to salt and pepper it before I put it in the oven. It gives tomatoes kind of a bitter taste. So when it comes out, just salt and pepper and just mash it up real good.
So it's just roasted tomatoes, but we call it confit.
Roasted for a really long time, low and slow. All right, so we add a little bit of that. And now this is just a balsamic reduction.
Balsamic is a vinegar.
Yep.
And that gives it a little bit of acid.
Yes, ma'am.
Balsamic vinegars can be, you can find them locally, and there's also some stores in Lexington that specialize in balsamic vinegar.
There's
Stuardo's.
1,000 different kinds of balsamic vinegar, just like olive oil. There's so many different brands and so many different ones you can use. This is a relatively cheap one because I've cooked it down with a little bit of honey.
Oh.
So it makes it a nice syrup. It doesn't come in that consistency, but just reduced down, it looks like that. So we're going to get our pan going on the stove here. At the restaurant, we've got a nice flat top we can put it on, but you can do this at home just as easily.
Make do, Matt, make do.
I've got a little bit of melted butter. We're going to add that. And basically at this point, you're going for a grilled cheese. Which
So
would you like to talk about the cheese?
I would. Sanford and Colleen Dotson. We'll be hearing about them in another segment. But they are originally from Phelps, and they are making big waves in the Kentucky culinary world by making sheep cheese, of all things.
We're going to add our meat sandwich here. I like to press it down a little bit. That'll help it get nice and toasty.
I'm waiting for that sizzle.
It'll be there.
All right.
So we're going to, both sides, butter, get it cooked up, nice and toasty on both sides, and then we'll take it off and we'll see what it looks like in just a minute.
I'm going to plate it up. Now, other ways that they suggest that you can plate a meatloaf, they suggested in Southern Living, Edward Lee, he used, he had the bread like you, but he did a huge dollop of Yukon mashed potatoes.
Oh, like an open face. I
yeah,
like it.
and slap that meatloaf on top of it, and you ate it in meatloaf. Then they had a second one that they suggested that if you were perhaps, I don't know, tired and wanted an egg for breakfast, but wanted some meat too and were tired of sausage, they served the meatloaf at open-faced, and they put a fried egg on the top. And that was very pretty too.
That's another good version there. See how we're looking here.
And he peeked, and it's starting to get very brown.
Very brown, very pretty. This is one of my favorite things to eat.
What are the other type of things you're going to be having at your restaurant, the Blue Raven?
All kinds of things. Everything's going to be fresh. We're making everything basically from scratch. I mean, ketchup, we probably won't make ketchup, but I have worked at places where we made ketchup from scratch. We're doing for the messy eater, we're going to have a peel and eat shrimp.
A what?
Peel and eat shrimp.
What does that? Peel and eat.
Peel
All
and eat.
right.
That means it comes to you with the peel on. You got to eat it.
Nothing fancy there. It's
Nothing
peel and eat.
fancy there. Beer butter sauce. It's going to be really wonderful. That's another one of my favorite things to eat. Filet. We're going to do a nice spicy fried chicken with a bourbon honey glaze. I'm trying to do a lot of southern foods. Get bourbon in there as much as I can. Everybody loves bourbon. And I like beer a lot too, so I'm doing a lot of different things with beer. We're going to have a PBR, no bean chili. If you're into that kind of thing. A lot of people don't like the beans in their chili, so.
And it's going to be basically, it's going to be comfortable food.
It is
just
comfortable
with
food.
a little bit more of a twist because you're a real chef.
That's right, and it's going to be a la carte, so you can pick your entree, match it with smaller sides.
A la carte, that means you can pick and choose. And where he's going to be talking about small plates, and you do not let small plates, that name, throw you. What that means is he brings out little sample plates, so you can have a large entree, or you can kind of share with all your friends and keep passing around with the small plates, which is a lot of fun, and gives you that community feeling, which is what Blue Raven is going to be all about.
Food is about being with people and enjoying it, and I like to go places and eat as much stuff as I can, but it's hard to do a lot of places because of the portion size, so this way the prices are going to be in line and you'll be able to try a lot of different things if you're out with a large group, and it's going to be really nice. I'm looking forward to being
It's going to be fun.
So we've got this toasted up now, and I learned this at AP Roots. This is the way you plate a sandwich. Slice it on the diagonal here. We're going to place it into our nice metal pan there, and a little balsamic just on the top, just to make it look pretty. And there you go.
And there you have it.
That's the meatloaf sandwich.
Back at the table at Friends Drift Inn. Today has been the comfort food. We've talked about a meatloaf sandwich that professional chef, rock star, Pikeville's new rock star chef, and it's falling apart on me. You get it, Matt. You got longer arms. We're talking about Matt Corbin, who is with the Blue Raven. Will be opening soon in April. We talked about that. You had been around the block a few times, You of course went to culinary school at Sullivan, but you also had some other opportunities. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I did my externship through Sullivan at Bistro La Belle Midway. That was a great experience for me. And then I worked mostly in Lexington, AP Roots, Signature Club on Lansdowne, Greenbrier Country Club, which wasn't so memorable, but let's glaze over that one. And Cleveland's and Versailles.
And we talked about Cleveland's and Versailles being Chef Awita. I've written several pieces for the newspaper on Chef Awita from Holly Hill at Midway, but she had Cleveland's as well at that time.
And then shortly after that, I went to Paris, Kentucky, and helped open up Varden's Bistro in Paris, and ran that for about a year. And now I'm here in Pikeville, and we're opening our own place. And I've come back, and hopefully I'm going to put in a wonderful place for this community.
Well, you talked about you've been in the big city, and you've come back. And you brought your wife as well, and now your wife isn't from here, so this is a whole new world for her. How is she adjusting?
She's learning, but she enjoys. She thinks it's a beautiful place, obviously, because Eastern Kentucky is a beautiful place, but she's definitely learning. She's enjoyed having my family around.
So we'll be looking forward to great things from Matt Corbin at the Blue Raven, which is in the old Wells Motor Building.
Yep, right downtown.
Right downtown. I'm really excited about all the things that he's going to be doing. We've enjoyed a great meatloaf sandwich today. You can tune in to my website, Friends Drift Inn, where we'll also be talking about comfort food, and find a recipe for rice pudding. Rice pudding is simple, and it's just one of those things that makes you feel like you're at home. So we're closing out today at Friends Drift Inn. I've been with professional chef Matt Corbin. Tune in next week or next month. And what do we say, Matt? Friends drift in, share the giggles.